Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Weeb from Sportsnet. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after a 3-0 loss by the Jets to the New York Rangers. The drought continues when it comes to playing really, really good teams, or teams at least above the playoff line. It's 30 games now. 30 games, last 30 games the Jets have played. They've beat teams above the playoff line twice. That's over 35% of a season. Listen, that stat to me tells the story of a season. Never mind what happened before, never mind the hole that the Winnipeg Jets had put themselves in. If you're a team, even if you had gone in good position around Christmas time, if you're going to play 30 games of a season and only scratch out 2 wins against teams that are above the playoff line, basically the upper half of the league versus the lower half of the league. 16 teams make the playoffs, 32 teams in total. So the upper 16 teams in the league, the Jets cannot beat. And the thing I find interesting about this is I personally think by the conversations that we're having with the players, with Dave Lowry, the coach, I think there's a realization that the Jets are not that team, right? Like, I think a lot of us think that the Jets are a good team disguised as a bad team right now. I think there's a feeling that, everyone, you remember that win that they had over the Tampa Bay Lightning 7-4. And I think there's this feeling within the Jets, fan base that there's this good team that just is hiding inside this. I don't know so much that that's the case. And we've had the conversations before this about the fact that, basically since 2018, this team has trended downward and downward and downward. It hasn't been a perfectly straight line downward. Stock market wise, there's been some blips and ups and downs, but this team has been trending downward for the better parts of 4 to 5 years now. But the one thing I find interesting about this is the conversation. I mean, again, tonight, Dave Lowry had talked about being, fairly happy with his team's game. He talked about, having the game in their hands against the Tampa Bay Lightning. I don't agree with that. I mean, they were up 4-2. That doesn't mean they have the game in their hands. There's still a lot of hockey to play. There's half the game to play. And sure enough, they didn't leave that period up and then got absolutely blown out in the third period. But this is, so I think what was happening is I'm thinking of this team in a different way than maybe Dave Lowry is, or maybe even the players are thinking themselves. But the language that I hear after the loss tonight, the language that I heard after the last game that the Winnipeg Jets played against the Tampa Bay Lightning, maybe even against Florida before that, is the language of teams that realize that they are not the caliber of the teams that they are playing. And I guess what I mean by that is if you are, the head coach of the Ottawa Senators, right, and you are hoping that you are a team that is on the climb, right, you're going to go into games and you're going to play really good teams and you're going to have good periods, and then that team is going to make its way through. And what you're going to do is you're going to go with your team and you're going to focus on the good stuff that you did. Well, we put in a couple of goals and we did this and we defended well in this period. We lost it a little bit here. But to me, that is the language that you use to address teams whose confidence you need to build, teams that are fragile, and teams that are trying to build towards something. And I just wonder if what we're seeing here, what we're hearing here is not, again, we go back to this argument that the Winnipeg Jets just may be the Calgary Flames of last year, right? A terrible team that turns things around, and here we are. And I hear a lot of people calling for, a pause, and let's not get too crazy here, and let's not tear everything down. We could turn around. We could be where the Calgary Flames are next year. I feel like the language that we're hearing from this is how you talk to a team that is not at the level of these teams, can't be at the level of these other teams. And now you have to talk them up into their confidence, into building, into creating something and going forward. And to me, that the thought occurred to me talking to Dave Lowry today. It just, there's too much sunshine and too much, we did good, in the last couple of games where there were a lot of good things to take away from those games. I mean, what I take away from these last 3 games is the Jets cannot beat good teams. It's as simple as that. They are not on that level. But what we hear, not necessarily from the players, because I think the players' assessment of themselves has been fairly harsh, but what we hear from the coaching staff here is this is a team they seem to be trying to coach up. For not the first time, but I'm starting to wonder more and more what next season is going to look like, because I do think there's a lot of people that think that this is the blip on the radar, and that the Jets are going to turn things around next year. They're going to add a coach, whatever they're going to do, add a player here or there, or whatever, and then they're going to be back to 2018. I think that there's a lot of people that still feel that way. I'm starting to wonder if the fight for the playoffs, everyone expected it this year. There was a lot of talk about the Stanley Cup in training camp this season. I'm starting to wonder if we just saw the first of potentially a stretch of years without the playoffs. Clearly, there's a lot that has to happen, but the sense that I get from this is things are a lot deeper than even maybe the people who break this down thought they were. I may be a little harsh in that assessment. Let's bring in Ken, because he knows how to balance that harshness when I do get a little harsh. He also has the best music in the business, everybody. Let's bring in Kenny. Yeah, Ken, listening to that awesome music there, I realized I was probably a pretty big downer to start the show there. We need some sunshine and rainbows in here. Do you have any to offer?
Well, first and foremost, I would say that Dave's probably just trying to even out some of the non-sunshiny commentary that we've heard from players in the last little while here. Sean, I would say that, obviously Pierre-Luc Dubois, his tone was certainly not the same. It felt like they had the puck a lot in our zone, even though it might have been on the outside. They still had the puck and we don't. It's frustrating. Here's the thing. Dave Lowry had his truth serum moments earlier on last week, Sean, right? So he's not going to pound these guys over the head every single day for the rest of the year. That would be my response. Do they have some moments in the game today? Sure. I don't think that they certainly didn't carry the play by any stretch of the imagination. High danger chances, according to Natural Stat Trick, in all situations were 12-9 for the Rangers. There wasn't a single period where the Jets, had an advantage there. So even at 5-on-5, they were 11-8 for the Rangers. So, did Shesterkin have to make a couple of really nice saves? Sure, yeah. Nikolai Ehlers had a great chance, tried to go 5-hole. They had a couple good looks from the slot. But, yeah, I think that what we saw today, the Jets didn't give up maybe as many chances as they did against Florida and Tampa. That's true. But I don't think that, I would say it wasn't probably the Rangers' best game. But look at the Rangers have now had 3 shutouts in a row, and they used Shesterkin in only 2 of those 3. So I think I'm gonna have to check my own receipts. I think earlier in the week, I said the Jets were playing 3 elite teams and then another team that was, had the best goalie in the NHL. I would say that the Rangers to me look like an elite hockey team.
Oh yeah.
They're tied in points with the Carolina Hurricanes. So, they are very good. Do they have some defensive issues that they're going to need to solve in the playoffs? Yes. But guess what? They have the great eraser. They have the best goalie in the NHL right now. I know our friend Elliot Friedman always says when the playoffs start, Vasilevsky is the best goalie when the playoffs start, and that's true. He's got the last 2 cups in his hand, but Shesterkin this year, best goals against average, best save percentage. He looks very good. He's going to be tough to beat no matter who the Rangers are playing. So, in terms of the Jets, we'll focus in on them. I thought they had a few moments, but what did you say there was? I would say there's improvement from the weekend games, but in the NHL, you don't play for improvement. It's an important step after a team gets its behind kicked 2 games in a row. But, in terms of what you were saying earlier, do I think that I wouldn't read too much into, I called these empty calorie games in my column on the weekend. I wouldn't draw too many conclusions in terms of game 76 based on what we might see in the fall. But your point remains the same. Like what we're seeing now is that I think it's all laid out in the open that this is not a championship caliber team the way it's constructed. So changes need to be made. It doesn't mean that you trade everyone. And Nick, we appreciate you being here, but the Jets are not going to be rebuilding. We've talked about it all year long. The Jets basically are going through a season where they're not going to have a single sellout. They're not going to tear it down and say, they hope that they can get Connor Bedard in the draft. I just don't see that happening. It's just like financially, I don't see the Jets being in a position where they're going to say, let's win 30 games and try to stack the odds. I mean, that happened to the Arizona Coyotes, and they didn't get Austin Matthews or Jack Eichel that year.
Yeah.
So that's not happening here. The Jets spent over the salary cap this year, and as long as they continue to be a cap team, like they're not going to tear things down. And what I would also argue too, I mean, when you have Nikolai Ehlers, Josh Morrissey, Kyle Connor, guys like that beyond the 2-year window that we talked about, that includes Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuck, I don't think that you tear it down with the hopes that you can find, the next Nikolai Ehlers, Josh Morrissey, Kyle Connor. That's just not the case. The Jets have some good pieces in place. They just need to augment the pieces that are in place and try to take another run at it. I mean, does that mean someone in the core is going to be moved? Foundational piece? I mean, I think it's certainly a possibility, but they're going to have to sort a few things out. They're going to have to, again, make some changes on the back end because they need to make room for some young players. But I don't see this as being the start of misery for the Jets necessarily. Is it going to take a little longer for them to get back to contender status? Obviously, it will. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be torn down, Blake. I'm sorry. That's just not going to be happening because all the people that say do it, they're not the ones that are buying season tickets. I don't think there's a lot of people that are going to sign up for 50 losses next year, again, for a chance you might get the lottery balls to bounce your way. I just don't see that happening. I mean, I don't see it. So again, changes need to be made, but I'm not quite as bleak in terms of the prognosis. Can the Jets beat Calgary? I mean, that is a topic that we're going to explore further because, Brad Treleving was on After Hours the other night, Sean. I mean, last year when the season ended, some people weren't sure Brad would continue, and a lot of others, I've mentioned this before, wanted to drive Johnny Gaudreau to the airport to his next city. Johnny Gaudreau has just surpassed 100 points, and he's an MVP candidate. So am I saying that's going to be the case for Mark Scheifele? I'm not sure. But what I would say is that sometimes the turnaround is not, I mean, it's challenging, don't get me wrong. It's not an easy thing to do. But when you have the goaltending piece in place, sometimes the team is a lot further ahead. And again, Jacob Markstrom is an elite level goaltender, which is part of the reason why the turnaround in Calgary was, part of the reason that they got things turned around, along with bringing in some important pieces, some winners, guys like Blake Coleman.
Yeah, I the more I think about it, the more I don't think that Calgary Flames example is the comparable here, and I do wonder about this thing. I mean, this is what happens with teams similar to the Winnipeg Jets. I mean, you go up, you go down. The amazing teams like the Pittsburgh Penguins of the world, even the Washington Capitals of the world, are able to stay and maintain for a really long time. If you think about how long those teams have been competitive, boy, oh boy, it's something else, Ken. Like we've seen the rise and fall of the LA Kings. Yeah. In the case of the LA Kings, the rise, the fall, and somewhat of a rise now as they look to be heading back towards the playoffs, and the rise and fall of the Chicago Blackhawks, all in the time of Sidney Crosby and the Penguins that have remained a good team. Like it's unbelievable how long those teams have stayed. And I've said this before, like it's hard, right? Because you take a look at the Winnipeg Jets. I think everyone felt like the Jets were going to be one of those teams. 2018, it was a coronation. It felt like they were the next big thing in the NHL. I remember about 3 years ago, I remember being early and saying, watch out for the Colorado Avalanche because it's going to be this team and the Winnipeg Jets duking it out for Central Division supremacy for a long time to come. And I was half right. But boy, oh boy, the bigger risk at that time was to say that Colorado was going to turn into something, not the Winnipeg Jets. But it's got me thinking, like, this year the Jets missed the playoffs. I know everyone likes to believe and everyone thinks that this is, a star-studded really good team that just isn't playing up to par this year, but maybe, just maybe, this is the beginning of tough times, and that would be tough to take. We all want to have a brighter future, Ken, and that's
Yes.
why we should probably transition into our sponsors who know how to create a brighter future, especially Cambrian, because it's getting to be house hunting season. We all know a few folks getting ready to house hunt this summer. If you're thinking of buying a home, it's a good idea to know what you can afford and to get pre-approved. Getting pre-approved for a mortgage is a key step, so that when that perfect home comes up, you're ready to take advantage of it. Apply to get pre-approved for a mortgage at cambrian.mb.ca. And Ken, I wanted to bring this up here. You were talking a little bit about this game, and the Jets, and the one thing that I thought about them is I do think they did have a better game, right? Like this, I like this game more than I like their game against Tampa, and definitely more than I like their game against Florida. But this is kind of the thing that I've talked about before, and I don't know. You tell me if you potentially see the same thing. What I see is when this team defends the way that Dave Lowry wants them to defend, or even the way Paul Maurice wanted them to defend last year when they went into the first round of the playoffs. I'm not sure that this team, as potentially dangerous offensively as they can be, I'm not sure this Jets team and this Jets core and the really talented Jets players know how to score when they're defending well. And I think that this is one of the reasons I think you see the Jets so often slip into this laissez-faire brand of hockey, and they love to play this wide open style because that's how they score. And we've said this before. This is a team that loves to score. They love to be offensive, so they love to get down ice. And when they do, we can see how dangerous they are. Because I take a look at that. One of the reasons I wasn't the biggest fan of that game against the Tampa Bay Lightning is what I saw, again, was just Jets opportunistically scoring, but not keeping up on the shot clock or on the chance clock against the Tampa Bay Lightning. But they had 2 goals on 4 shots and 4 goals on 10 shots, which is that is just so Winnipeg Jets. That's what the Winnipeg Jets look like. We don't put up a lot of shots, but the shots that we put up, so we get caved in on our end. But boy, oh boy, when that puck squirts loose, just chip it up the ice to me and I'll be right there and I'll put it in the back of the net. That's how the Jets like to get their offense. And tonight made me think, I was watching them play and I was thinking to myself, is this team who is playing very, very well defensively on this night, but are they capable of scoring and building offense off that? Because we hear this all the time, and there's some teams that really, really, subscribe to this. St. Louis is a team that really subscribes to this, but they build their offense off of defense. It sounds great, right? It sounds romantic. It sounds like exactly what you want to do, Ken. Defend well and then turn those pucks over and move it up ice and go score your goals. I just don't know that the Jets know how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, they're a team that has been this year feast or famine, Sean, right? I mean, we've seen tons of games where they've been 5 or higher. We've also seen a number of games where they're 2 or fewer, and they won 3 of those games where they're 2 or fewer, right? I mean, that's been their downfall, and it's 33, I think 34 games now where they've had 2 or fewer. So one of 2 things is true. Either their offense isn't as good as we think they are, or, like to your point, when they are too focused on defending, they don't score enough. Or door number 3 is they're not going to the hard areas enough and they're too reliant on scoring on the rush. So when you play a team that's not great either with puck management or defending, the rush chances and the goals are there, and then they've taken advantage of sort of inferior opponents. Or, I mean, again, I would lean towards door number 3, but there too, then you look at the series with the St. Louis Blues, where the St. Louis Blues are a very, very good hockey team, and the Jets played great basically in all 4 games against them.
Yeah,
they didn't really have trouble scoring, and they also defended well. So again, they didn't do that nearly enough, and that's one of the reasons why they're going to miss the playoffs. So. And further to your point, I mean, this isn't just a 1-year step back. So the Jets are going to need to have, they got some hard decisions that they're going to need to make here. And, we'll see how deep the cuts are. I mean, I just don't see this as this is not a touch-up situation. It's not a full makeover. but it's somewhere in the middle of those two things. And to me, I think that that's the important thing about the off season is that there are pieces that are important that are in place, and there are other pieces that need to be improved. Because this is fairly clear to me. The status quo is not going to get it done. They're going to need to make some room on entry level contracts, or lower income players. Guys like Dylan Sandberg, Ville Heinola, David Gustafsson. But they're going to have to augment that middle piece. I mean, I've been banging on this drum for quite some time. I wanted to see Morgan Barron with Adam Lowry and Mason Appleton. They had some nice shifts. That to me is a line that could succeed. I mean, whether that's going to be, it's most likely going to be a third line. I mean, that's something I'm pretty adamant on. But I mean, again, I understand your point too, where that offense needs to be enhanced on that third line, or else you got to spread the love around. So
yeah.
I mean, sorry, it's also, Paul. Why would you say? I mean, based on what, Paul? Why are they not?
Got to read it for the.
Paul Audette. The Rangers are good, but not elite. I mean, they're at 106 points now. I mean,
I think he'd said earlier, more? I think it's Paul who'd said they're not the Florida Panthers or the Colorado Avalanche, which, by the way, are the two teams that Renny picked at the beginning.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
final. But I would say
like they may miss the playoffs entirely.
Vegas. Yeah, boy, oh boy! I thought
could be
you were
0 for 2 here.
Crow. I thought you were. I thought I was going to be eating crow.
I'm gonna just be careful about the premature celebration. Right now, you are looking very good, and I am looking very poor. There's no doubt about that.
For anyone who doesn't know, Ken's pick to come out of the West was the Vegas Golden Knights. And if you would have asked me, I thought the Vegas Golden Knights were finishing second. I know if they weren't hit by a freight train of injuries this season, they probably wouldn't be having the problems they're having, but they probably wouldn't have been able to make the financial situation work without having all those injuries as well. But I mean, I thought that they were on their way to coming back. If you take a look at the LA Kings, they looked like they were limping into the last little stretch here. But that loss against the Devils last night by
I
Vegas,
watched the game.
My goodness, that's the game to look back and think, well, I mean, there it was right there. Here's the other part about this. And so right now,
just quick one. Yeah. They put up like 40 some shots against Andrew Hammond wasn't even in the league in the last while. He turned back the clock to the Ottawa Senators Hamburglar days yesterday. And Keegan Colasar, the Winnipegger or the Manitoban, scores late in the second. Banks went in off Subban's skate. And then in the third period, they give up 2 quick ones. And the first one is like Robin Leonard. It's a high flip that he can't catch. And they couldn't get it going. They scored late with the extra attacker, but just couldn't get the job done. So
it was nuts. Now it's interesting you bring up Ottawa, because the closest thing I remember that Ottawa year. It was what was that? I was in Halifax at the time covering the World Curling Championships, but they just went on that crazy run, and the Hamburglar was the guy who was doing it for them. Now it's reminding me of what Vancouver is doing right now. They've won 6 straight games. So I'm taking a look, and I'm going to get right back to the Jets situation here right away. I just want to close this out. But if they win tonight, and if somehow the Ducks were able to beat the LA Kings, the Canucks would be just 2 points behind LA with a game in hand and one more game to play against that team. So they would very much have their destiny in their own hands. The only thing, though, Ken, is I took a look at the Kings' schedule. It is just it's a cakewalk after cakewalk. I mean, it's the Sharks, it's the Ducks twice. There's one other, the Seattle Kraken, and then it's the Vancouver Canucks. So, I mean, would you be surprised to see LA lose to the Canucks, but then win the next 4 games, and Vancouver would fight its way back into this fight and then lose it down the stretch because it's got tougher matchups? That would be tough to see. I mean, I think the one thing I don't know about everyone else on here, I know a lot of fans hate other Canadian teams because of the rivalries. I'm usually just kind of, 1993 is far too long. I want to see a Canadian team win it. So the more Canadian teams we get in there, the better. And if they were able to slip in there, they'd be playing the Edmonton Oilers, which would mean at least, there you go, sunshine and rainbows, Sandy.
Nice work, Sandy. Nice work.
I wanted to get back quickly and just talk about the Jets situation. We know the Jets aren't making the playoffs, but it's funny because I texted Sarah Orlesky after this. because I know that she tweeted, and I know that on the TSN broadcast they said that the Jets were officially eliminated. I don't believe that's the case. Now they did lose tonight, and because Nashville got a point or 2 points, I think they won in overtime or a shootout.
They did, yep.
Or something like that. So they can't catch Nashville. So the best case scenario for the Jets would be catching 8th place. The way I see it right now, the tiebreaker is regulation wins or regulation overtime wins, which is a category that the Dallas Stars are terrible in. So right now the Jets are 10 points behind Dallas. If the Jets ran the table and got all 10 points and Dallas lost all their games, then they would be tied in the standings. And keep in mind that both Vegas and Vancouver would have to fall apart as well. But I do believe the Jets would actually take the tiebreaker against Vegas in that scenario because they've got more regulation wins than Dallas does. But that's not happening. This is all a moot point. I guess it's just my way of trying to point out that I don't believe the Jets have been mathematically eliminated here tonight. But the next point they lose, or the next point that the Dallas Stars get, will officially eliminate the Winnipeg Jets. We know that's happening. A couple other things I just wanted to bring.
Sir, let's go. Sorry, I would like to attack.
Sorry,
that wasn't the one that I wanted to highlight. Actually, there was another one about Dubois here.
Okay,
this is the one here. I would say Paul Audette, PLD, looked like he wanted out of this team tonight. I would argue that it's the complete opposite. If a player wants out of the team, he doesn't show that much emotion because he's already checked out. So the fact that it bothers him so much is completely the opposite of what your suggestion is. He wants it to turn around, but he wants it to be part of the turnaround process. So I would argue the opposite side of the coin. And if the player wanted out, he would just basically be mailing it in for the remainder of the year. I know that some folks are concerned about the lack of offensive production during the stretch run. And I get it. I mean, Pierre-Luc Dubois was, it was going to be automatic that he was going to eclipse 27 goals to tie his career high and go beyond that and maybe hit 30 plus. Like right now, he's still stuck on 26. So I get it. But he still had a very good year overall. And in some ways, I mean, garbage time points don't really count for a whole lot. So I would say that, the more important thing would be for Pierre-Luc Dubois to become a 30-goal scorer next season. I still think there's a chance he gets there, but I would just say that I think that Pierre-Luc Dubois has shown time and time again that he is one of the emerging leaders and that he does want to be here. Again, he's got to do it. He's got to put his name and signature on a contract for a long-term extension, but I still don't see Pierre-Luc Dubois being someone who is going into the office at the end of the year saying, I don't want to be part of this, send me somewhere else. I think he's going to plant his flag and be part of the potential turnaround and trying to get the franchise turned in the direction where they're back to being more than just a bubble team or a non-playoff team in this situation.
I think there's a conversation to be had there, but before we do, we got to give a nod to the Johnston Group who do such good work. You won't find two businesses with the same challenges, but you will find 30,000 businesses with Chambers Plan employee benefits, proudly administered by our friends at Johnston Group. Chambers Plan is Canada's #1 plan for employee benefits because it evolves with the way you work and live. The plan is run as a not-for-profit designed specifically to support small businesses, and its unique pooling strategy keeps rates stable, so you won't have any surprises at your next renewal. Chambers Plan now comes with professional consulting on key financial, legal, and HR issues, and Teladoc telemedicine services are included with every health option. See how Chambers Plan can benefit your business by visiting chamberplan.ca. And these are the guys that we would need. Maybe we need them working on some of the contracts for next year. These guys know their money and know how to make the workplace enticing for people to stick around. It's an interesting conversation. The one thing I was thinking today, there's not a lot when we talk about the who won the line a PLD trade. And again, let's just make it clear and evident and obvious that both of us feel that if the Jets are to sign Pierre-Luc Dubois long term, they win that trade. It doesn't matter who got the better player. It matters that the Jets would have been losing Patrick Laine anyway. But you can't compare these players in a lot of ways. But one way that I was thinking you can entirely compare these two players is, boy, oh boy, they're both streaky. Like Patrick Laine can go on hot streaks and then just go absolutely ice cold. Pierre-Luc Dubois has been the same way. I mean, I'll say this, Ken. down the stretch here, I've taken a look at some of the players. I think Blake Wheeler has 2 points in his last 6 games. I believe he's minus 14 in those last 6 games. Pierre-Luc Dubois is actually at about a point per game, was a little less than a point per game because tonight would have put him behind that arc. So he was actually producing points. But one thing I don't feel like I'm seeing from Pierre-Luc Dubois down this stretch, when kind of, when the season was on the line and the Jets had to get things done, he didn't really, that game of his where he was taking over games night in and night out seems to have dried up. I will say this, Ken. I said this a long time ago, like we're 5 games left in the season. I think it was around 15 games left in the season that I was saying, these guys know. I think Pierre-Luc Dubois said something with 18 games left. He was like, we need to win them all, right? And then they proceeded to lose a bunch of games, and I would couch this by saying, yeah, sure. I can say right now that Blake Wheeler needed to show up over these last 6 or 7 games that he's played. The same thing with Pierre-Luc Dubois and Nick Ehlers and whoever else. But the fact of the matter is it's probably not true. The Jets weren't making the playoffs either way. And the Jets players probably knew that. So I would say, maybe be a little bit careful about how you gauge what Pierre-Luc Dubois has done over the last 10 games or, anyone on this team, what they've done over the last 10 games, because this is a team that knew it wasn't making the playoffs. Now, am I excusing them as professionals from putting in their best effort? No, I absolutely am not. But I also do feel that I think it's a cop-out to say about athletes, and I think Kyle Connor had said that earlier today in the pregame skate. It's our job as professionals to be ready to go. And I agree with that 100%. I think for the most part they are. But I also do think hockey is a sport that kind of flows out of you. It's instinctual. And so when your mind is absolutely perfectly right, that's when you play your best hockey. And I just think that the Winnipeg Jets minds can't be perfectly right because they know what's happening here. They know there's nothing. Like these last 5 games, there's nothing at stake for this team. Or maybe we can debate later, Ken, what's at stake, because I asked Dave Lowry about that. But this is a team that knows it's not going somewhere. They know they're not in a dog fight for the playoffs, which can sometimes bring out the absolute best in people. But to bring it back around to Pierre-Luc Dubois, we saw the best of Pierre-Luc Dubois this season. We didn't quite see him at a pace, a low pace like we saw from him last year. He fell pretty far last year, but there are some stretches of hockey here where Pierre-Luc Dubois needed to bring more throughout this season. Would you not agree?
I mean, I think more offense, but Sean, he's still he's right neck and neck with Connor McDavid for penalties drawn. Does he take too many penalties? Yes. So there's a fine line there, but I mean, he also that means if you're drawing penalties, it means your engagement level is high. So I didn't see the wild dips like we saw last year. And again, I said it at the time. I mean, I think most of it was injury related, but I mean, the next step is also very simple.
Sorry, Ken. Brent Palachuk, I just got to answer this. Does the media ask to speak with Wheeler, or have you guys quit asking for him? We do ask for him. Anyway, sorry, Ken. Sorry to interrupt.
On occasion. I mean,
interrupt.
When the Jets are eliminated, Blake will be out there. I mean, whether it's the day of the game or the day after. I mean, like he doesn't have a lot to say right now. So people, I understand people want Blake to talk, but they don't like what Blake is going to say. So, I mean, he's the captain. He will be accountable when the Jets are knocked out of the playoffs. He will say what he has to say. I don't know.
I think that's not enough. That's not enough. It's not enough to only show up once the team's been eliminated. Like I know what you're saying, and I think that that's exactly what's happening. And I think that, like you'd said, I don't know. We know people in the chat room, like Julie Sue, is going to absolutely love that Blake Wheeler will come out and spit fire and get really angry, and then we know that other people in the chat are going to look at it and think that it's improper, right? But regardless, I think when you wear C, it's your job to be the voice of your team. And I take a look at a lot of the other teams that I've covered during the playoffs, captains of other teams in this situation, and they would be out talking. They wouldn't be sitting back and not coming out and waiting for the team to be officially eliminated before they talk. I have to say, I disagree on that. The role of a captain is greater than just showing up on the day that you're eliminated and talking to the media at that time. He needs to do more.
That's not what I said. I mean,
Well, I know,
before.
I know
I
what you're
mean,
saying.
and
Yeah,
years past,
I know that's not your opinion.
when the
I know
room has
you're
been
saying that,
open,
yeah.
Blake has spoken plenty. But I mean, right
That's
now,
fine, but the room's not open right now.
no,
And
that's true.
so it's, I mean, it's easy to step up to the mic, right? It's sorry, I shouldn't say it's easy. It's probably a very tough part of the job to have to step up to the mic and answer for things that have gone wrong when you're upset, as I'm sure Blake Wheeler is and the rest of the Jets are. I just think it comes with the job, right? Like that's my take on it. You wear the C, it comes with the job. That's what you're hired for. So yeah.
Yeah, and just one quick thing to put a bow on the Dubois stuff. Again, would he have wanted to produce more offense than he has this year? Yes, but he's still, like I said, he's a goal away from his career best. So I think that it would be, if Sean, I'm just going to put it this way, and I'm to the people in the chat room. If I had told you, Sean Reynolds, that Pierre-Luc Dubois would score 26 goals after what happened to Pierre-Luc Dubois last season, would you have taken the over or the under on that?
I would have taken the under.
Okay, and I would have taken the over. So I mean, again, this is the one time that you.
Sorry, you think that he's?
I think he was. No, I think I would have said he was. I would have said he would be around this level, 25.
So
to
you
30.
would have taken.
I said 25 to 30 in my preseason prediction. So I mean, he's going to be over 25, and looks like it'll be under 30. So that's one of the few that I got right this year. So.
Don't be so hard on yourself, Kenny. Come on, you got plenty right this year, Ken. You got.
Yeah, I mean, what my point is this: yes, I mean, but if Pierre-Luc Dubois wants to be a $8 or $9 million player, is he going to need to produce more than he did down the stretch for the Jets or in the second half? Yes, but come on, John, that's a wake up right there. You're not going to put Pierre-Luc Dubois on the third line. And also, one quick thing here too. I mean. I don't like the fact that Dubois and Connor aren't playing together. They had a great year together. They should be back together. I mean, and this is the other part. We've seen Kyle Connor and Ehlers together before, and it doesn't always. I mean, again, did they have some good shifts together? Yes, but I like to see them. I think that Dubois and Kyle Connor is going to be a thing for the next little stretch. Again, am I okay with them being broken up for a few games? Sure. But don't split them up long term. That's their combination to getting back to a certain level. And Ehlers and Paul Stastny have played great together. I don't mind trying Kyle Connor there, but especially in a year where at a time when Dubois is not producing offensively, taking away the guy that he's had the most success with, that I don't want to see that for a long stretch of time. Let's also switch to the defense. I mean, right now. Logan Stanley made a mistake on the first goal. I mean, Dave Lowry didn't call him out, but the mistake is simple. Josh Morrissey is the left defenseman on the power play entry. Josh was turning where Zibanejad was, and Logan Stanley was overly aggressive. He cut across the grain, and he did not get the man or the puck. The man went past, and it led to an easy tap-in redirection for Ryan Strome. That's a play where, I mean, I understand it's been a tough stretch for Logan Stanley. That's a play that he's got to make a better read on. I mean, I understand you want to be aggressive at the blue line, but it led directly to an odd man rush and an easy tap-in goal. So, I mean, if you're struggling to stay in the lineup, you can't afford to be making a play. Again, here's the problem. When you're a young player like that in terms of experience, it's a tough situation because you want to be assertive, but you also have to make a better read in that situation. And mathematically eliminated or not, Dylan Samberg needs to be in the lineup. I mean, the next 5 games aren't going to be the difference between how he plays next season, but it will help him get ready for next season. And I'm not saying you have to sit Logan Stanley, but you should, if you're the Jets, you should be playing Dylan Samberg next game. I think I'd like to, on the homestand, I want to see Ville Heinola in at least 3 or 4 of those games that they're going to be playing. I mean, I know some folks keep saying just play all the Moose players. You can't play all of the Moose players. But
I wanted to throw a theory at you here, Ken. It's Sean's crazy theory time.
Sorry, Lynette, I'm okay with you being with Sean, but on which part? About Dubois, or what are we talking about?
No, I think she's talking about the Wheeler coming out talking.
Oh, okay. I didn't say that he shouldn't be talking. I'm just saying that we can't forget like Blake was a guy that spoke every game when the room was open.
Yeah.
That is also what makes it more of such a drastic change. The fact that he speaks so little now compared to before, that is a drastic change. And I'm not saying it's a change for the better.
Sorry, I'm loving Julie Sue's fire on this, who's saying,
I love
"Oh,
the intensity level is high.
FFS, get over it, Sean." I mean, listen, Julie, you and I can disagree on this one 1,000 times over. You had made a comment here. I'm not going to go searching for it, but you said it's not Wheeler's job to be a PR mouthpiece. I don't think you get it at all. I don't think you understand what the role of a captain is. The role of a captain isn't to refuse to communicate with the fans. He's supposed to be the face of the franchise and the voice of the franchise. So you may like the fact that he comes out and gets angry and doesn't answer questions or refuses to talk to the media. That's your thing. But I go in every other market I'm in, and every time you're talking, the captain is the guy who comes out and talks, and the captain's the guy who steps in front of the bus when the lights are bearing down on you, when the train's coming down the tunnel. So I get it. I know how you feel about this. You know my takes on it. You can disagree with it as much as you want, but you are flat out wrong if you think that it's not the job of the captain of a sports franchise to have a PR component to his job. It is in the job classification. If you don't want to do it, you don't take the letter. So I get it. You can get frustrated as you want with me, but yeah, see, you could argue it as much as you want. You're wrong, period. I mean, there's times I'll say, you've got your opinion, I've got mine. You're wrong on this one. You are flat out wrong. I wanted to address a couple other things while we were at this. Well, one of them was going to be Julie's saying that Lowry has lost the room. I don't think that Lowry has lost the room. I think this is just what it looks like when you're going down the stretch and there's not a lot of hope. But T-Shoot here is saying hindsight is always 2020. The media was pumping the tires pretty hard at the beginning of the season. I hate it when people say the media. It's a lazy term. Like, you're on a show with two guys specifically who make our thoughts accessible as much as we can to people. T-Shoot, I don't know if you were watching at the beginning of the year, but I had an argument with the chat room on the second game of the season when everyone was saying the Jets are for sure a Stanley Cup contender. And my suggestion was, are we really saying that adding Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon magically turns this team from a team that got absolutely destroyed by the Montreal Canadiens last season, like destroyed epically and historically, statistically destroyed in the playoffs, to suddenly being a Stanley Cup team? I've questioned this team's supposed Stanley Cup pedigree since the beginning of the season. So it strikes me as being weird for you to come on this show and say the media. When you do that, like, if you want to go and say specifically someone was saying this, like, listen, if you want to go look for guys who picked the Winnipeg Jets to win the Stanley Cup, you can go find those guys. There's a lot of guys in the media who did that earlier on. So if you want to go find those guys and call those guys out, that's fine. But like, you're coming on here and you're making accusations about the media pumping the tires and suggesting that our comments right now are based on 2020. Check the receipts, Tishu. I was talking about this at the beginning of the year. So this is just off. This is off. If I gave wake ups, I'd be giving one right now. But that's Ken's thing, and I'm not going to horn in on that.
It's a shared thing. We have it on mugs, buddy. We have it on mugs. It's just one other quick one, and it's not just Winnipeg. So there's also this, belief from some that it's just media from Winnipeg. I mean, our friend Frank Saravalli picked the Jets to win the Stanley Cup. I mean, Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick saw them as potentially the best team in Canada. So these are people who are colleagues. They are national reporters that follow the league closely. So did I think the Jets were a Stanley Cup contender? No, I said the Jets, there was Colorado in the Central Division, and then the Jets would be in the middle of the division, maybe potentially battling in a group of people for second. That hasn't transpired. They're battling for, sixth, I guess, basically right now. So, it happens. Last year, a lot of people thought Calgary was going to be great, and they weren't, So, again, but also to blame the media for putting expectations on a team that doesn't live up to them. I mean, come on, folks. The team is the team that is not delivering on. It's not the media putting too much pressure on them. Teams go into the league, they try to win. I mean, the Jets thought they were a better team. They haven't lived up to the billing.
I wanted to get to my theory here. So the Logan Stanley versus Dylan Samberg thing. I had a buddy of mine who was a really good hockey player in his day text me today and asked me, he wanted to know yours and my take. Ken, I didn't want to speak for you, but I gave him my take on the whole situation because I am a little bit confused about the idea of Dylan Samberg going in ahead of Logan Stanley. And I'm wondering down the stretch here, because exactly like you're saying, I want to see Ville Heinola. I want to see more Dylan Samberg. I want to see some of the younger guys come up and show what they can do. I like that we're getting a look at what Morgan Barron is capable of down the stretch here. That's what garbage time should be, right? Yep. This is where you figure out these things and give additions to players and auditions to players and so on and so forth. But I wonder right now if the idea with the Winnipeg Jets is if you take Logan Stanley at the end of the year and if you pop him out of the lineup for Dylan Samberg, who goes in, I wonder if there's a little bit of worry within the Winnipeg Jets organization that ending the year with Logan Stanley getting pulled out, they're more worried about what that could do to his confidence than what it would do for Dylan Samberg's confidence to give him this addition at the end of the season here. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do understand what you're saying. And, would that be part of the situation? Potentially, of course. But if the goal is to dress the best lineup, which is what the Jets have said is their goal, right now Dylan Samberg is playing a more solid game than Logan Stanley, despite being less experienced. We know that the Jets got Logan, the best out of Logan Stanley late in the season. Yes, he got a couple goals against Montreal in Game 4, but Logan played with confidence at the end of last year. Right now, Logan's not playing with confidence, but again, I understand there's a debate, right? Are you better off by letting him reset now and spending the off season, or are you better off letting him try to play through it, which seems to be what they've chosen to do? I would also argue that once the Jets are mathematically eliminated, we both think the Jets are obviously not going to make it. We've been saying that for weeks. You can nobody's saying you can't play both of them. I mean, we heard all year that Neil Pionk was banged up. I mean, if Neil Pionk has been playing through injury, then Neil Pionk can sit down for the remainder of the year and you can play Heinola instead of Neil Pionk. And then whatever you decide to do with Dylan Samberg and Logan Stanley, well, that's up to you as the head coach and an organization. But this is my issue with how the defense core has been handled. The issue for me, that is the big one, is not I understand you want to play the best lineup possible or whatever else. And a lot of times the coaching staff had leaned towards the veteran player. But during the last couple of years, even in the years where the Jets had to go to the play-in, they were playing pending UFAs, whether it was Nathan Beaulieu and later on Tucker Poolman, Derek Forbert on a one-year deal. I mean, Derek Forbert had a great first half last year and then faded. So now here's another example. Earlier this year, the Jets were playing Nathan Beaulieu ahead of other young players. Yeah. And to me, it's not just now, it's the cumulative effect of making that choice. You think it's short-term gain by playing a more experienced player. Again, I'm not here saying Ville Heinola should have been a regular the last 3 seasons. That's not accurate. But there were opportunities to help expedite the process of becoming an NHL regular. Now, again, you're not doing that when you think you're a contender. And this year, the Jets thought they were a contender. So I understand the path that they chose. But down the stretch, it was becoming evident that some of those veteran players were not performing up to their capabilities. So that's when you have to open up the door to allow one of those other players to try and take advantage of the opportunity. So that's where my issue is in terms of the usage. Like right now, I think it's very clear that Heinola and Samberg need to be in the top 6 next year. And if you're not going to make that happen, then they need to use those players to try to get better up front. And again, I am on record and I continue to feel the same way. For everyone who says Ville Heinola should be begging to be traded, too bad. Vladimir Tarasenko asked to be traded in the offseason too. Well, how is it Vladimir Tarasenko doing with the St. Louis Blues, who are one of the best teams in the Central Division? He's close to 40 goals this year. So that's how you handle it. If you want to get moved, You play well, and then you either get dealt or you do the best that you can in your current situation. The Jets have had plenty of guys asked to be traded, and not many of them were 21 years old when they got shipped out of town. So I just don't think that take is a smart one. And Ville Heinola still has the potential to be a top pairing guy for the Winnipeg Jets at some point. So I still think he is in the mix. Um, Actually, Andrew Haleko, right now, Pionk is not better than Trouba. Trouba's having a great year for the New York Rangers. And I think that Neil Pionk has had a tougher year for the Jets, especially since December 5th. Um, he's a guy that I think needs to have a big offseason and be ready. Again, he's a guy who competes hard. We know that. He's put up some points, but he just hasn't found a really great fit. And I think one other thing that I would like to see, Sean, I'd like to see Neil Pionk play some minutes with Josh Morrissey. Over the last couple of seasons, we've seen flashes of it, but they couldn't play them together 2 years ago because they didn't have enough depth to do it. Now, I think that because of the way Josh Morrissey is playing, he can help Neil Pionk get out of his funk. So I'd like to see them play some time together. I know that Dylan DeMello has done his part on that pairing, and it's good on him for doing so. But the Jets need Neil Pionk to be an impact player next year. And part of the way he can do that, I think, is by playing some minutes with Josh Morrissey, who's playing probably at one of the best levels of his entire career.
Yeah, he's lights out. Let's get to the Comrie decision because you'd asked Dave Lowry after the game. I know that Connor Hellebuck is sick. What we heard after that was non-COVID related sickness, but it was going to be Comrie's game regardless. And to me, that was, when I heard that, it was like finally some sanity in this decision. I mean, down the stretch here, we talked about this. Never mind the fact that we know the Jets weren't making the playoffs. Even if they were, even if the Jets at this moment were, 2 points out and fighting to get back into this thing, I still think the way that he's played this season, he would have earned the time, especially because of how much time that Connor Hellebuck has played. But your take on Comrie getting the call tonight and how he played and how the team you thought responded in front of him.
Yeah, excellent effort from Eric Comrie. And again, I talked about this after the last game. I thought I have no problem with him going back to back in Florida. I know that you and I differ on this one, but to me, I thought if you do that, then you need to give him a break and play Comrie on Tuesday anyway. So 5 games left. I think that Comrie needs to play at least 3 of those games and maybe even 4 out of the 5, to be honest. If there's, obviously there's, this was, and just so the folks didn't understand what happened today, I'm just going to give you a little bit of the play-by-play here. So okay. Part of the problem for not being on site for a road trip like this is what happened today. The Jets had an optional practice. Connor Hellebuck was not on the ice today for the optional practice. And generally speaking, Sean, you know this, but maybe our viewers and listeners don't know this. On the days when Connor Hellebuck doesn't skate in the morning, that generally means that he is playing. So, and again, in our business, you don't want to assume, but Dave Lowry was asked about the lineup, and Dave said same lineup as Saturday. And generally speaking, when he says that, and if there is a goalie change, he would announce the goalie change when he is asked about the lineup. So that's where the confusion came in, and it went even further. During the pregame, when the broadcast came on today, they have video of Connor Hellebuck taking the warm-up. Hellebuck had to take the warm-up even though he was sick because Mikhail Burden had some travel issues and hadn't gotten to the rink. And finally, when he got to the rink, Kevin Cheveldayoff looked at Connor Hellebuck and said, you could come off. And that's what happened. So anyways, so that was the case. So I'm good for Eric Comrie for playing. He played very well. I mean, one of the goals is power play. The other one he had really no chance on. And long story short, I think that Eric Comrie should play on Thursday against Carolina again. Connor Hellebuck is obviously not 100% if he was, too sick to back up. So, and sorry, for folks who, I understand when I mentioned December 5th with Neil Pionk, I know he's banged up. And I'm not saying he's playing terribly, but I'm saying he played the last 2 seasons at an elite level, and this year he has not played at an elite level. And I would also say up until December 5th when he got a concussion and was suspended for kneeing, he had been playing at a pretty high level. But since that time, he hasn't reached the level he has played at previously. He wouldn't be playing if he was concussed. That would be negligence. So and it's not about what the payment is. Jacob Trouba, I just said, was having a better season than Neil Pionk. He's been a physical force, and he's put up 37 points and counting. So that's not a Jets made a mistake, or that they should have buyer's remorse. What I'm saying is that for the last 2 seasons, I would say Pionk was ahead of Trouba. This year, Trouba is ahead of Pionk, so it's a close race. And the issue for the other part of that is that Ville Heinola hasn't played enough to make an impact. So that trade, really, you won't be able to judge it until Ville Heinola becomes a regular.
Okay, last topic before we move on here. I love this question by Rob Somerville, who asks, Kenny, Renny, are we considering the Schmidt-Dillon experience a bust? If so, are you trading one or both of them to give the younger players a chance? What do you think, Ken?
No, it's not a bust. I mean, that for me, this stretches well beyond the on-ice value, and I would say that, especially Brendan Dillon has made the Jets' defense tougher to play against. He's a big, strong guy. He moves the puck fairly well. He gives them a physical element that they didn't have before. He's an upgrade from Derek Forbort from last year, who's a big guy who doesn't play a super physical game. I would say Nate Schmidt has had an up and down season. I think that's fair to say. I thought he started very strong with Josh Morrissey. And then I think part of the issue for Schmidt is that he ended up on the third pairing with Logan Stanley, who is struggling. I'm not saying that Logan Stanley's struggles caused Nate Schmidt to struggle, but the pairing as a whole didn't work very well. And the same thing when Brendan Dillon is with Logan Stanley. The pairing has not had good numbers, analytically or on the ice. But what we did see, Sean, and
sorry,
no, it's fine. When I talked about this earlier. When Dillon and Schmidt played together, they actually had some solid games together. So, but to me, the bigger thing, what have we been hearing about? Kyle Connor talking about culture. Brendan Dillon and Nate Schmidt have played for winning organizations, and they have helped on the culture side. It has not translated into on-ice success, so I understand why people think that it's not working out the way that they envisioned. But if I'm the Jets, I think that Nate Schmidt is a little bit of an upbeat person. I think that is what this organization needed. Brendan Dillon is a very upbeat person also. Those guys can both play. Are they both going to be here in the fall? I'm not sure. But I think that those two guys have made a positive impact on the Jets in some ways that aren't necessarily shown on the ice. But yeah, I mean, are they going to have to make a tough decision if it's with Dylan DeMello or Brendan Dillon or Nate Schmidt or even Neil Pionk? Somebody has to be moved in order to make room, but you're not moving all of them. So it depends if you're going on a small deal or you're going on a blockbuster deal, or that's where it comes in for me. And I know that we disagreed, and I often argued on the other side of what you were saying, Sean. I understand what you were saying. What the Jets also did was bring in guys. Nate Schmidt has been a first-pairing defenseman as a complementary piece. He played an important shutdown role with Vegas and did a nice job in Washington before that. Brendan Dillon played on the top pairing as a complementary piece to Erik Karlsson, to Brent Burns. Was he a guy that was going to get you 50 points? No, but that wasn't what the Jets got him to do. Brendan Dillon's job was to make the Jets tougher to play against. He has done that. I mean, is he throwing crazy hits that cause guys to want to fight him every game? No, but no. And here's one of the comments from Sean Reynolds' brooding pessimism. The problem with Schmidt and Dillon is that they both have term, and now there's a logjam of young guys that need to play. So Here's the thing. The whole purpose that the Jets went out, they didn't want a Band-Aid solution, so they went out and intentionally got 2 players with term. And so it hasn't worked out the same way that they had expected. But now what was originally a strength, like I said, I've used this terminology. They went from a shortage to a surplus basically overnight, right? So now you got to diminish the surplus. You have guys that are ready to play. So if that means trading some of those guys, they need to do that. And if they can't move the veterans, then they're going to have to consider moving some of the younger prospects or the medium-age prospects and try to upgrade their forward group. But to me, Dylan Samberg needs to be playing an important role with the Jets. He's a big, strong guy. He's shown a physical edge. He's also shown that he can move the puck. He makes the Jets' defense tougher to play against. So Dylan Samberg needs to be part of it. So, and again, I also argue that Ville Heinola needs to be part of it too. But if you're not going to have all of Heinola, Pionk, and Morrissey in the same defense core, then they're going to have to move somebody.
So I don't think it's a bust. I think that's too strong a word. But what I do think is, I think going and getting those two guys to patch the hole that was believed to be the hole that was keeping this team from competing for a Stanley Cup for a bunch of years. And clearly that I think we've seen enough to know that that was false thinking. It was false to think that there was just, a 3-4 defenseman that was missing and this team was off to the Stanley Cup. And I go back to, you can go check out game 2 of the season, Winnipeg Jets against the San Jose Sharks. I made this argument back then. I make it to this day. I think it was too much to ask those players to come in and have this happen. So I don't necessarily call it a bust, because I think a bust puts it on those two players, saying those players failed to do what was needed of them for this team to compete. I think I don't think they've had their best years, but to your point, Ken, I think at the beginning of the year, Nate Schmidt showed us kind of exactly what you can expect to get from Nate Schmidt from the start. And I think that there's been times this season where you've seen that from Dylan. Now, as this team has failed defensively this season, I think a lot of times defensemen like Brendan Dillon, it's harder for them to affect the game physically the way that they would like to. But if you're a really tight checking team and you're constantly being backed into a corner by a player who's pushing you into a direction, it makes it easier for Brendan Dillon to catch those guys. So I don't think it's a bust, but what I do think it is I think it's exposed that this roster was not properly constructed. And I'm going to go back to not the beginning of last year, Ken, an article that you wrote about Alex Pietrangelo when he was available, and saying, we didn't expect that this was going to happen, but Alex Pietrangelo, if you were the Winnipeg Jets and you had money at that time, and if you were going to go out and take a big swing, maybe that's the big swing that you take. Now, I don't necessarily think Pietrangelo has had the best of times in Vegas, but I agree with the premise of that, because I do think the issue right now is I think Josh Morrissey, as phenomenal as he's been this year, is a guy who either is side by side with your number 1A guy or the guy driving your second pairing. But you take a look around at all these championship teams, and you brought up a guy like John Carlson and what Pietrangelo was when he was with the Blues, what Cale Makar is, what Fox was from what you saw from him tonight. When you get defensemen like that, those defensemen can chew up so many minutes in the playoffs, and they can carry guys beside them, that it means that you can go and take a guy like Brendan Dillon and put him beside a 1A guy and have a ferocious number 1 pairing. And if you've got that, then all of a sudden you've got Josh Morrissey coming out on that second pairing, and then you put your next guy with him. I don't know who that would be. Maybe you leave it as DeMello, and then they're coming out against the second layer of attack, the second best guys on the opposition. Then you make up what you can out of your third. Maybe that allows you to go young and go Samberg, or maybe Samberg plays on the second pairing alongside Josh Morrissey, and then you play some younger guys lower, and maybe Schmidt's on your third pairing. But the fact of the matter is, I think what those two players did is they exposed. I just think the Jets are way too top heavy. Too much of their money is tied up in their top 6. Too many of their top 6 skilled guys are the same kind of guys. And there's just never been this idea of taking those guys and spreading them out throughout the lineup and creating depth scoring. It's always been this idea of stack everyone on your top 2 lines, play the heck out of those top 2 lines, use your third line as the bludgeon, the blunt instrument, which worked really well at a time like when Tanev and Kopp and Lowry were there. That worked absolutely phenomenally, right? But I just think that bringing those two guys in and saying the defense is fixed was not right from the very beginning. That wasn't it, because I think the best championship defenses are built off of a 1A guy who has the ability to turn games over. Think Dustin Byfuglien. I mean, if you want to see a guy who went and did it throughout the playoffs, Dustin Byfuglien went and did that. And then that means that other guys like Tyler Myers get on the ice and are able to score the kind of goals that he scored in Game 7 of that series against the Nashville Predators, and jump up and pop up into the play, or the important goals. I mean, is it Jacob Trouba scores the 4th goal in that comeback game against the Nashville Predators in game?
What was the tying goal? It's the tying goal.
Tying goal. And then Byfuglien scored the go-ahead goal. Did he not?
So. Well, maybe Trouba might have got the 5th. I'm not sure.
So this is what I'm saying is like, when you've it's just that thing where I think the Jets, what they needed was that guy at the very top. And in order to get that guy at the very top, you got to pay a lot of money. And that means that you need to rejig the balance of what you have at the very top of your lineup. So what I'm saying, what I'm contending, is that the Jets for years have had an issue in that too much of their money is spent right at the very top of their lineup. I said it, if you want to go back to shows 1 and 2 again, I know that I said, at least in that number 2 show, that if there's a concern about this team, one of the concerns is that I didn't think that they were going to have enough 3rd and 4th line scoring, which has turned out to be true this season. It just seems to me like, rightfully so, they've spent a lot of money in net because Connor Hellebuck has saved their butt for a long time, but their money is all spent up top and there's not enough to create a formidable defense. And so I think the Jets brought in guys who fit not only the fact that they needed 2 guys, they wanted veterans, but they had a certain amount of money to spend, and that's exactly what those 2 guys cost. So it seemed like a perfect fit, but it was a perfect fit on a roster that I believe wasn't constructed the right way. And so I don't point towards Nate Schmidt and Brendan Dillon and say they're the problem. And anyone out there who thinks that if you got rid of those guys and moved Dylan Samberg in and Ville Heinola in, that all the problems would be solved, I'm telling you, it's the exact same thing. The same problem still exists. I don't see either of those players stepping in to be that true 1A number 1 defenseman, which I think the Jets are missing, which I just think allows everyone to move down and fall into their spot. I think that the balance in the Winnipeg Jets lineup is not there. And what we learned from signing those players is that the belief that all they needed was to patch that hole and everything was good here. I think what instead it did was expose the fact that the balance is not right on this team.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of it for sure. I mean, the Jets have a lot of money invested on the back end, and that's what I'm saying. They need to have Heinola and Samberg will be on lower ticket contracts. I mean, you could even extend that to Johnny Kovacevic. This is what I've talked about before. Kovacevic is a guy that I think at worst is the Jets' 7th defenseman next year if he's not in the regular rotation. And that gives you another league minimum kind of contract there. So, here's the issue. I mean, a lot of teams are top heavy because when you put up big numbers, you get big dollars. I mean, that's what happens. I mean, the Jets were also fortunate that they had some team-friendly contracts for guys that also produced big numbers. And
I just want to jump in here. Rob Mahoney, it gets your point, says the Sharks and Leafs have way worse top-heavy contracts, and he's right. And this is a problem.
So does Chicago
as well. Right?
Chicago's
it's
worse
a problem
than the
for
Jets,
Chicago now,
right? I mean,
right?
But
So
they also put up 3 banners. They put up 3
right.
banners, so then you can overpay.
Well, and they paid
not
guys
even overpay.
right
They paid guys who were producing. I mean, I wouldn't even call it an overpay. I would say that's what it costs.
Well, they also got away with it too because they got their number 1A defenseman in for a ridiculously low price. Like they had Duncan Keith for a sweetheart of a contract.
Yeah, 5 point something. Yeah,
exactly. So
or 4 point something.
And they'd had Seabrook at a really good number until they won and signed him to a really big number, and that's when everything went south for them. But the fact of the matter was they were able to overpay up top because they had the 1A and the 1B defenseman locked up to really good contracts. That's not what the Jets had here. So I agree with you guys wholeheartedly, and I agree that this is. That this is the tough part, right? And to me, I guess this is the next part of where I'm going with this. It creates tough decisions. If you're top heavy, you either have to keep rolling the dice like the Toronto Maple Leafs, keep doing year after year after year, and we'll see if it pays off this year. But so far, the Leafs, what has all that money spent up top got them? It hasn't got them a playoff win yet, right? So is their balance right? If they lose in the first round this year, do we question the balance there? And I'm questioning the Jets' balance. I don't think that there needs to be money allocated. There needs to be a heavy hitter brought in that changes the way the defense look. I contend that moving guys like Dillon and Schmidt out out and just bringing in the young guys, it looks great. And I honestly think, you may be right that Dylan Sandberg could come in for Brendan Dillon, and maybe you really don't miss a beat. Right? Maybe what it looks like isn't that much difference, but it's still, I don't know, is making the team better and sending them on a path to being a championship caliber team. I still contend that the way the money is allocated all around the team, you need to get better on your third and fourth line. You need to get more dynamic on your back end. And I don't think you can do that with the money locked up where it is. I think you have to move contracts and try and move things around to try and create a different balance on the team.
Yeah, and I think you can have Brendan Dillon play with Dylan Sandberg. They've had some strong games together already. So again, they're going to have to move somebody though. So, and the other part of Sean, to your point, I mean, because Neil Pionk had 2 great seasons for the Jets, they made a long-term deal for him and paid him like he would be a 1B or 1A defenseman. And this year he hasn't quite played at that level. But again, do I expect him to bounce back? He's a great candidate to bounce back based on his 2 previous years, but he's going to have to do it. And you're right. I mean, the third and fourth lines need to be improved. I think that having David Gustafsson in the NHL will help improve the bottom 6 scoring. But you have to find guys who work with one another. And just, sorry, one quick one. Gary, did I say that Ehlers would get 40? Yes, I did. He missed 19 games, and he currently has 27 goals, I think. I mean, do you think Nikolai Ehlers has not lived up to his end of the bargain this year? He's been one of their best players. He just happened to miss 19 games when a guy stuck his leg out and made him suffer a knee injury. I mean, Nikolai Ehlers is one of the least concerns for the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah.
Anyway,
well,
that's wake up territory.
Well, I don't know if it's wake up. I'll say it like this. Listen, if you're listening to Ken or I or anyone else in sports media who's giving you takes on what's going to happen throughout the season, get ready to be disappointed, because that's what's going to happen. We get it wrong a lot of the time. And hey, I'll proudly tout the fact that I picked the Colorado Avalanche and the Florida Panthers to go to the Stanley Cup final. That's great. And 2 years ago, I correctly picked the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Dallas Stars in the Stanley Cup final at the beginning of the season with the Lightning winning. But I also last year picked the Philadelphia Flyers to go to the Stanley Cup final. Okay, so like we're gonna get it wrong, and yet I mean that's the business, Ken. Like I don't think you can be upset about that.
Well, sorry, just a quick one. I just wonder. I mean, Gary, were you predicting he would have 21 goals? I mean, I don't understand what the argument is. Ha, you got it wrong. I mean, Nikolai Ehlers has been one of the Jets' best play drivers when he has been in the lineup. And he has barely played on the top power play until Mark Scheifele got hurt. So do I think that he has a chance to become a 40-goal scorer next year? I'll probably say the same thing next year. I think that he's going to be between 35 and 40 goals if he plays a full season. I have absolutely no problem making that prediction, and I'll do it again. It's the first year in his career he's been a point-a-game player. I mean, what more do you want from the guy when he's in the lineup?
I think this is Remo chipping in here saying
that's a good
not
pull
buying
right
that
there.
I had the this is a good pull because I had but I'll say this, I did pick that, but here's the other part about that. We did the Sportsnet picks. You didn't do it that year, Ken. You did it the next year. But we had 18 guys from Sportsnet make their picks that season. 5 of us correctly picked the Stanley Cup final of the Tampa Bay. 5 of 18. That's almost a third of all of our analysts picked Tampa Bay and Dallas in the Stanley Cup final. And 4 of us, Speck, myself, Kyle Bukauskas, and Eric Francis all had picked Tampa Bay to win. Elliot Friedman had correctly picked the final, but picked Dallas to win. And we should say, Ken, you and I had seen Dallas play the previous season in the second round against the St. Louis Blues and take them to double overtime in Game 7. We knew how tough that team was to play in the playoffs, and we knew they could be a wrecking ball once they got in there. So this is the kind of like sneak peeks that you get doing our job that maybe you wouldn't necessarily get sitting at home, but covering that Dallas team for that 7 games it was clear that was a team that was not to be messed with in the playoffs. That's why we were able to pick up on that.
And in that series, Sean, Jamie Benn hit the post on a wraparound in the first overtime. So it's not like they weren't close. They just about won their own game in overtime before Pat Maroon became a St. Louis legend with his double OT winner. I mean,
Right.
And that year, that was the coming out party for Miro Heiskanen, right? I mean, that he was unbelievable in that playoff. And Rope Hintz was great in that series. So that was a smart pick by you, no doubt about it.
Okay, let's shut this down here. It's been a fun one. I know that before we go, we love to pump our merchandise. If you're interested in any Kenny and Renny gear, shirts, water bottles, mugs, just go to www.shopsportsnet.store. Other than that, once again, we always want to say we.
Hang on. Thursday, we're gonna have James Patrick on our long form show on Thursday at 3:00. It's Tuesday today. Next time we're on is going to be Thursday afternoon for the long form show.
Right, and then we should also let people know that we're going to be doing a special edition of the Kenny and Renny show for the Winnipeg Ice Game 1 opening of the playoffs, where we're going to be talking with a number of analysts in the WHL and the CHL space and some members of that organization. We heard the call. I know someone earlier on in the chat was talking about, the focus kind of moving in on the Moose and on the ice. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to go shine a light on the WHL. So we'd love it if you join us at that time as well. That would be really great.
Friday from 5 to 6 will be the ice special.
You betcha.
And then Thursday will be the regular time, 3 to 4. I think James Patrick's going to join us right off the top.
Yeah. And just wanted to say before we do go, just wanted to once again thank our sponsors at Cambrian and the Johnston Group. We've said this before with Sports Talk Radio having disappeared in town here. We're trying to create spaces for everyone to talk hockey and to talk sports. So if you appreciate it, we really appreciate that you show up and pay attention to us and talk with us and interact with us. But it's our sponsors that are investing in creating this space for people in the city. So we really appreciate that they're doing that. We hope you do too. And then finally, just want to show appreciation for the chat room. I think it got a little chippy here tonight. I hope I didn't go too far. Julie Sue, I know, left the chat because she was upset with me pushing back at her. I hope I didn't take it too far. She's a valued member of our community here who's been around for a long time. I don't know what to say. We're people too. I felt like I was getting back or pushed. Then sometimes we push back, but we do have a ton of respect for everyone who takes part and provides us with questions and comments. Thank you so much for doing that. We hope to continue doing that with you in the future. We will see you